I give the floor to the Honourable Member for Western Arctic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and of course it's my pleasure to stand here today and speak to this Bill C-377, a bill that would help Canada, would make Canada assume its responsibilities in preventing dangerous climate change gas emissions. Mr. Speaker, I spent the last day and a half, I had the opportunity to travel to Greenland with the dealing on the issue of northern sovereignty. Had the opportunity while I was there with the Minister of Natural Resources to travel to the Greenland ice cap, Mr. Speaker, which is an amazing place in the huge expanse of ice that is really has been in place for hundreds of thousands of years, has an enormous volume of moisture tied up in the ice cap, but, Mr. Speaker, is under severe strain right now. And quite clearly, the scientists that we met with on the ice cap talked to us about the conditions that they're seeing within this massive and seemingly eternal landscape. Ice that is thousands of meters thick, covering a whole continent. But right now, Mr. Speaker, it's moving. And the movement within the ice is accelerating. The rate of loss of the ice cap is accelerating as well. It accelerated over the decade to a point where it was between 250 and 300 cubic kilometers of ice loss each year. Last season, it achieved 500 cubic kilometers of ice loss. A massive increase. When we were presented at the, of course, any discussion of northern sovereignty links to climate change, and when we were discussing and had the opportunity for presentations on climate change from very respected climatologists in large research institutions, they said, look, this situation right now in the Arctic with the Arctic ice is likely to mean that if we have another warm summer this year, that you'll be able to sail a boat across the North Pole from Norway through to Russia. This is an extraordinary statement. It may not come to pass, Mr. Speaker. We may have a cooler summer, but the direction that our climate is taking is extremely disturbing. And we must recognize that. And certainly as Canadians, we have a tremendous responsibility to lead ourselves and to lead the rest of the world towards solutions, towards mitigation as well as towards reducing our impact on it. And so, of course, this bill setting out the kind of goals that are required to achieve what the scientists have said is a sufficient reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for the world by 2050, setting out the goals for Canada to achieve those is extremely important. It's part of what we have to do here. And Mr. Speaker, I'm dedicated to this. I'll dedicate the rest of my life to working to achieve the kinds of things that we have to do in Canada to preserve this our life and the chance for our children and grandchildren to continue to prosper. That's certainly a worthwhile goal and something that I have total faith that this country can do that. It can move ahead in this fashion, that can achieve our goals in this way, and I don't see that we can't. And Mr. Speaker, I had an opportunity again to talk to the Danes, and I like the Danes. The Danes are not the Danish Minister of Energy told me last year. He said, you want to accomplish something on climate change, you want to accomplish something on energy, you need to build a consensus, a non-political consensus within your parliament of the directions you have to take. It's so important. You know, the relentless sniping over climate change that we've seen in this last 2 years really doesn't accomplish all that much. But, Mr. Speaker, we did accomplish one thing on climate change already. When we sent the Clean Air Act to a special committee, we got the majority of this Parliament to agree on the directions that we should take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We got the majority of this Parliament to agree to the mechanisms that we should use to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And what I hear from the other party that didn't quite agree with us at the time, and they were pretty well on side with most of those mechanisms anyhow. We said in the Clean Air Act that we wanted to put a cap on emissions, that we wanted to put a price on carbon, that we wanted to create a massive retrofit program for this country, so that the first step that we could take would be to reduce people's use of greenhouse gas energy, so that we would see substantial decreases in greenhouse gas emissions rapidly, and that we would have a mechanism to fund them, and that these things could come to pass. Well, we did that work, and that bill is sitting there and waiting waiting to come back to Parliament, waiting to spring into life and to provide that direction to this country. So we've done that work. We need to see that kind of plan in place. Sometimes we find that other parties change from that. They start to talk about other ideas, like they're picking fruit from a tree. Well, here's a different fruit here. Let's try that one. Well, really, Mr. Speaker, what is required is a consensus of action. And we worked on that for a long time. And I'd say to the Liberal Party, remember what you've worked on in this Parliament. Remember the effort that you've put into this, the good ideas that you've put forward that we supported, and the good ideas that you have accepted from us. And remember that when you move forward with anything on this issue, that we need consensus, and that we need to build from consensus in this government and in this country to accomplish these rather difficult tasks that we have ahead of us. But if we accomplish them, we'll do a major and wonderful thing for the world and for our own society, for our children and grandchildren. So this bill, Bill C-377, is setting out the goals. It's giving us a framework to analyze the goals, to make sure that we're on track. It's a planning document of the first order. It's an opportunity to layer the mechanisms in, to understand how they work, to ensure that they're meeting the targets as we move along. And why wouldn't we have a process like this? A process that will take the politics out of it, that will mean that we can move ahead very carefully. And thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate your gesture. And you know, as always in this House, you know, the work that the speakers do to keep us in track and to keep us ongoing is great. And I also appreciate the fact that, Mr. Speaker, that you shared that green chair with one of my colleagues, who I'm sure will always relish that memory of that opportunity. But anyhow, and back to the subject at hand, how can we continue to work on this together? Well, we can continue by passing this legislation here. It's legislation that's a planning document that allows us all to agree on the process that we will follow. It's a document that gives us the flexibility to look at how we're making decisions, to ensure that those decisions are moving us in the right direction. It is, by its nature, a nonpartisan document. If we all support this, we can move ahead. We can make a difference to this country. We can make this Parliament sing a different tune towards the end of it, where we can say, look, here's the reality of what we're dealing with in this world, in this country, and let's make it work together. Let's make a better place for all of us. Let's put aside the politics for a second, for a day, for a week, a month, a year on this particular issue, and let's move ahead for the good of Canadians. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.